Okay.
Who's
What?
recording it, actually?
What do you want? What do you need?
Who are you with?
Tech Repercussions.
Oh, it says right there on his shirt.
So, as close as you guys can be without it being too full up with the...
Oh, okay. That's fine with me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
I hope it's off.
I'm way too nervous.
Oh yeah, I just turned mine on. I'm more nervous than I thought.
Really? I hope so. I mean, I was like, okay. I was counting all the minutes and the number of people. How many questions could there be?
It's true.
Right. I figured 50. Right, so I figured 15 per round. I know, it could be a lot. I was like, wait, that's too many. I hope some people go over and then they get in.
Oh, there's the light.
Oh, you're 15. Okay, good. Thank you. Are the microphones on now?
Do a countdown clock.
Ooh, wow.
Okay. Welcome to all of our guests here this evening. I will ask at this time if you'd please turn your cell phones off. We would appreciate that. There is not to be any applause or other noises during the evening except at the end of the evening's activities to thank the participants. This event is being recorded and will be published on the Hilliard Chamber YouTube channel. The Hilliard Area Chamber of Commerce, as the voice of businesses in our community, has sponsored Candidates Nights since 1999. The Chamber feels that it is an important activity as the business community is directly affected by the policies of the city government in Hilliard. Tonight, the public is invited to ask questions of the candidates for Hilliard City Council. This is how it will work. Blank note cards are available for you to write down a question for the candidates. Someone will pick up your card and it will be taken to the screeners who are representatives of the Board of Directors for the Chamber. They will be screened for appropriateness and to avoid redundancy. If there are a number of questions on the same topic, the questions may be combined and rewritten. And I'll note that if you do have a question written on a note card, please raise that high so we can see you and come collect that. I will ask the questions from the note cards directly to the candidates. And now to the candidates, you will have an opportunity to make a 90-second opening statement. An assigned timekeeper in front of you will begin monitoring the time once the candidate begins to speak. A yellow card indicating 15 seconds remaining will be shown to the candidate. A red card will be shown that time has expired at the end of 90 seconds and the candidate will cease speaking. I will ask a question and you will have 1 minute and 15 seconds to respond to that question. The timing of each response will be handled as stated before. There is time reserved in the program for the candidates to ask one specific question to another candidate. The question can take no longer than 1 minute to ask, and the candidate to whom the question is posed will have 1 minute and 15 seconds to respond if the candidate chooses to respond. At the conclusion of the question, or questions, rather, you will have the opportunity for a closing statement that will be limited to 1 minute. We will have the first candidate answer the question and then pass the microphone to the next candidate. We will rotate the first response among the candidates for each new question so that the same person does not answer each question first. And now I'd like to introduce our City Council candidates at this time. We have Tina Catone, Pete Marsh, Derek Richardson, Bob Stepp, Omar Tarazi, and Cynthia Vermillion. And now I'll ask the candidates, do you have any questions before we begin?
You said pass the mic?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you don't need to pass the mic now. All right, let's begin. Okay, go ahead. We'll start with Tina for your opening statement.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm Tina Catone. Hilliard is at a pivotal point with its growth and with the change to a city manager form of government. So I can think of no better time to include even more change than to include the changes that I think we need to see in Hilliard City Council. A Democrat has not been elected to Hilliard City Council since 1989. And of the 7 council members, only 1 is a woman. This no longer represents the demographic of Hilliard, and it's time for that to change. I am running for Hilliard City Council because I believe in being the change that I want to see. And I want to see a city council that is more transparent and that is more inclusive with community input into decisions before those decisions are actually made. I love where I live. Hilliard is a great city and with a huge potential, and I want to make our community an even better place for us to live, work, play, raise a family, and age in place. Now, I am a first-time candidate with a fresh perspective. I think that makes me particularly qualified really, particularly qualified to represent everyday people in our city government, and I will work hard to include input from all of the people in our community into our discussions. I have no agenda other than to help move Hilliard forward. Done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pete,
No clap.
please, we'll hold applauses till the end. Thank you. We'll go ahead to Pete.
My name is Pete Marsh. I'm the father of 3 young daughters, a small business owner, and currently Vice President of City Council. Hilliard is a great city to call home, and we're blessed with tremendous businesses, numerous amenities, and a great school district, just to name a few things. With your vote, I plan to continue to work on 1, balancing our residential growth with increased commercial growth. Hilliard has grown rapidly, and our infrastructure has not kept pace. Many traffic improvement projects are underway or are in the pipeline, and the income taxes that come from commercial growth are the best way to afford those needed upgrades to infrastructure and amenities. Number 2, to continue working collaboratively with the Hilliard City School District, Norwich Township, Brown Township, and improve our communications with residents. 3, helping our city to be more small business friendly. These businesses are vital to the fabric of our community, and we should be doing everything that we can to help them flourish. Number 4, make sure that we budget responsibly so our community needs are appropriately prioritized within our means. And 5, make Hilliard a leader in sustainability. I believe that responsible development will make us a more attractive location for both the residents who live here and businesses. This is an ambitious agenda, but working collaboratively, I believe we can make Hilliard an even better place to live.
Thank you, Pete. Now for Derek Richardson.
So my name is Derek Richardson. I am a small business owner. We've been in Hilliard for 13 years, my wife and 4 children. 3 of them have graduated from Davidson. 1 is a freshman there now. We love Hilliard. And I am a young grandfather, so when you have kids young, you have grandbabies young. So we have an 8-month-old grandbaby named Gaga. We love Hilliard, and the reason why I wanted to get involved in this city is because I love Hilliard. And when you love something, you want to make a difference. And that's just how I was raised. And my mom said, if you want to make a change, go make a change. If you want to be a small business owner, go be a small business owner. If you want to be a politician, go be a politician. When we first moved to Hilliard, we didn't know if we would stay here. Some people call it a bedroom community. We love it here. It has afforded my children the ability to get a A+ education from Davidson High School. It has afforded us the ability to keep my wife at home so that I can go out and hustle. People say don't use the word hustle in politics, but I hustle every single day as an entrepreneur. And I feel safe knowing that my wife and children are at home while I'm out there making money for our family. And because this is my city, the city that I love, the city that my children call home, I would like to make a difference and get involved, and that's why I'm running. Derek Richardson with a Y, D-E-R-Y-C-K, as in yo-yo.
Thanks, Derek. Bob Stepp.
Hello, everybody. Thank you to the Chamber for putting this together, first of all. Being a 29-year resident of Hilliard, I have a passion to improve what I feel is an already great city to live in. I'm a past member of the Hilliard Graphics Commission and the Hayden Run Corridor Committee. I'm currently a trustee on the Britton Farms Homeowners Association and was president for 10 years. I was the owner of 2 successful restaurant and delis. I've been in small business for a long time and a catering company also. I'm endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, Keep Hilliard Beautiful, and Norwich Township trustees. I will be a hardworking, responsive city council member. I will fight to make sure our tax dollars are used efficiently, and I will address our congested roads. It's important that the city work positively and closely with the Norwich and Brown Township trustees and our fantastic police, and also the Hilliard School Board. We all got to get together on one page. I will do everything I can to ensure Hilliard remains a great place to raise children, prepare them for the future, and develop commercial business to fuel our city services. I also want to, one of the biggest things that I'm really passionate about is making Hilliard a weekend destination. That's going to bring in tax dollars, and that's something that I'm really, one of the main reasons I got in this, is to help make the city a weekend destination.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi.
Thank you very much for putting this together. My name is Omar Tarazi. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for over 10 years. I'm about 40 years old. I've got my kids here, been working here. Very much love the community, love what we've got going on in Hilliard, and like to see it go to the next level. As a personal background, I was actually born in France and grew up in Kuwait until we moved here during when Iraq invaded Kuwait. We were here on vacation. So since then, my whole life has been with dealing with multiple communities, multiple groups, both on a personal level and on a professional level. So I really understand how to connect with the various diversity is having the right temperament to understand really where different people come from. I don't think that it's something that you are born with by gender or race or something like that. It's something that you have to be trained and experience and see where other people are coming from to be able to understand, and then how do you bring a greater whole out of the various parts. So I kind of view that aspect differently. And then I also don't view that we have had a Republican-Democrat issue in Hilliard. I think what we've had is a mayor way of doing business and now a new way of doing business. And I want to be part of the new way. I've been part of the change and continuing the change moving forward, which is a professional way, based on professionalism and collaboration, as opposed to based on politics and who you know getting what you want done. So we've got the city manager in there, and we're going to go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion.
Hi, good evening. I'm Cynthia Vermillion, and thank you again to the Chamber for hosting us. My family moved here 15 years ago, and so throughout the years I attended city council meetings, and one thing stood out very clearly, and that was that there was a lot of tension in those meetings. I am a collaborator and a consensus builder by nature. I listen to my clients very carefully. I'm a real estate professional, and I listen to everybody that I'm dealing with in a transaction, because we have to form a consensus in order to complete our transaction and make sure that everyone is satisfied with the outcome. I'm going to bring those skills to City Council as well. I want to make sure that you, the Hilliard residents, are listened to. I want you to be heard at the ground level and not at the back end of things where you get 3 minutes in City Council, and then by then the decision's practically made. I also want to build consensus with our school board, with the City of Columbus. They affect us a lot, with the townships. And so that is my goal as a City Council member, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. We will now begin moving on to the questions here, and we are going to start with Tina.
Again, okay.
Many of you have talked about affordable housing. Can you tell the community exactly what that means, and if you support increasing affordable housing opportunities?
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, we do all, I know that we all talk about that, and I was, someone told me early on in this process that I better have a strong opinion about affordable housing if I was going to be in this race, and I did a lot of research, and I do have an opinion. And Hilliard has grown, and it will continue to grow, so there's no getting around the fact that we have to be prepared to accommodate more people. But there are very many ways to accommodate more people that don't include building huge apartment complexes. I'm more in favor of things that help build a community. You know, we can build, patio homes are very popular. We can build townhomes. We can have small apartment buildings that are mixed in with homes. We can build small homes. We can have mixed-use developments. There are so many ways that we can accommodate more people in our community and have housing at a lower rate than buying a big house. And that will be part of what I will promote going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Pete?
This is a really complex issue for just 90 seconds. I prefer to think of this in terms of, instead of saying affordable housing affordability. One of the issues that a lot of us, particularly seniors, it becomes very expensive even just to keep your home. We do have very high property tax rate compared to some of our neighbors. And one of the ways that we combat that is we try to increase our commercial growth so that some of that tax burden is shared with commercial instead of only on the residential. So that's a big component. It's not just the house price, it's being able to stay in your house. As far as, I agree with what Tina said, you know, the standalone apartment buildings I'm not in favor of in any way. But as we continue to have pressure for continued residential growth, we do need to have a variety of housing stock available. So that does include the patio homes, the condo communities, and places like that where people can move in and out of different types of homes while staying within the Hilliard community.
Thank you. Derek Richardson.
90 seconds is so short to answer this question. So I'm going to talk very fast and very deliberate. I am somebody who did not always have my feet underneath me, as I would imagine some people in this room feel the same way. You sometimes have to downsize in life. I was one of those people. I'm not ashamed of it. I made money very fast in my 20s in the mortgage business. It didn't work out. We had a 5-bedroom home, 3-car garage, all that good stuff. We downsized to a duplex in Hilliard so that our children could remain in this wonderful city with this wonderful school district. Sometimes we think that affordable housing means HUD housing or Section 8. That's just not true. We can build affordable housing that include apartments or mixed-use developments that will allow families to build here in Hilliard, that will allow children not to be displaced from Hilliard when they are young and do not have their feet underneath them, and will allow people to stay in Hilliard when they are older and they have downsized and their family has left and their money has gone away. 15 seconds, wow. So affordable housing is crucial, yes, because we sometimes need to have an option other than $500,000 and $600,000 homes.
Thank you, Derek. Bob Stepp.
First of all, I concur with Pete pretty much on everything there. The thing that I feel that we already have affordable housing here with the older communities, Avery, Beacon area where the houses have been there for 40, 50, 60 years. These houses are just begging for new blood in there to fix them up, to bring them up to to newer standards and things like that to make it. But people can go in there and buy these at very good prices right now, and make something of it. And ownership, pride comes with ownership, and that's why I'm not in favor of apartments at all. Not at all. You just got to have something to give you a reason to come home, a reason to work, and a reason to do something, to get up every morning. That's by having your own place. And we got plenty of places already in place to buy into, and that's the affordable housing I would look into. And the taxes, something in the way of to help people out, maybe a tax, I don't know, a credit or something for 1 year to buy something like that. That'd be something to think about. That's the way I look at it.
Thank you, Bob. Omar?
Well, the honest answer, I mean, everybody can talk about affordable housing, but the honest answer is Allen City Council, we don't have the ability to lower land prices. We don't have the ability to lower the cost of labor and so forth. And as long as those materials are there and the economy is working the way it's working, these are much bigger things that a little city council in Hilliard can change. We can't, dramatically increase or decrease those prices. What we can do is we can tinker on the margins. If we bring in better businesses, increase the tax base, we can affect the tax base a little bit on the margin. Yeah, we can do that. I think we have overdeveloped apartments, and I think if you wait, right now you see there's about 800 to 1,000, actually around 800 vacant apartment units available right now if you want to go find one. And all of these things are built like, really fast, and if you just give it a couple of years, when you overdevelop, the prices are going to come down. So I'm not that worried that we're going to have a stock of lower income entry level things because we're overdeveloping now, and these things will catch up in the future. So I think we can with professional management, professional leadership, which we're bringing in with the city manager, we can attract the bigger businesses and affect it on the margins. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia?
Well, the median price of a new Central Ohio home right now is almost $339,000. That compares to 2011 price tag of $193,000. That gives you an idea of how much new housing has gone up. I'm going to talk to Omar's contention that we don't have enough housing, or that we have enough housing stock. Apparently, with the influx of people that are coming in, Central Ohio should be building between 14 and 21,000 new homes and apartments right now, but we're only building about 7,000 to 8,000. So we know that it's been told that we're going to expect 1 million more people in Central Ohio between now and 2050. Some of those people are coming to Hilliard. There's no doubt about that. So we do need to be looking ahead to that. Housing affordability is affected by zoning and regulations that local city councils can affect. So I do believe that if we work with the right people to know how to get this going for more affordable housing, that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question here, and we'll start this one with Pete Marsh. Our neighbors to the north have done an excellent job incorporating bike trails and green space into their development plans. Could you speak to your vision of Hilliard in the future and how we can greatly expand more public amenities for residents?
Yes, it's interesting. The most recent Rec and Parks survey report, the number one amenity that people appreciated was the trails, the multi-use trails. I use them all the time with my family. They're a huge hit. I definitely think that those are the types of amenities that we need to be continuing to improve upon. Our parks in general. I think over the last few years, maybe parks should have gotten a little more funding than they have. But that's one of the things that I hope will change going forward. There are costs to everything, so obviously we have to prioritize. We can't pay for everything, so there's roads that need to be reworked. There's parks that are way behind on 30-year-old playground equipment, for example, that need to see upgrades. And then you've got all these new residents who are expecting a higher degree of service. They're expecting those trails. So the prioritization during the budget process is a really key component, and that involves community input and a lot of conversations.
Thank you. Derek Richardson?
So you know, parks, trails, green spaces, that's part of what makes Hilliard what it is. It makes it a community where your kids can go play, have fun, be safe. I live right across from Davidson at the Avery and Davidson corner, and the new park there is getting use every single day. I met with Ed Merritt Monday just to have some talks, and I talked to him yesterday as a part of the Hilliard Optimist Club. I'm the president of your Hilliard Optimist Club, so we deal with thousands of kids in sports, and we're looking for more green space here in Hilliard. So speaking to Ed twice, I know that he has a wonderful plan for Parks and Rec, and I think that we need to continue to promote our Parks and Rec, our green space, our trails, etc., just like our neighbors to the north, but not because they're our neighbors to the north, but because we need them here in Hilliard.
Thank you, Derek. Bob Stepp?
If I'm on the city council, the first thing I'd say is any new construction has got to have more green space. You just have to. We already have something in the works right now, the city does with the sports commission. I think it's a lot of positive stuff coming out of that, and it's going to be fantastic for Hilliard. You're right, it could be increased, it could be more to it, and if I'm on the council, I would definitely make sure we have that, because it's something that I have a passion for also. So.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi?
Okay, I want to make 2 points quickly in the time I have. Number one, our friends to the north, they have a $90 million budget roughly, and we have a 60. And the main reason for that is that the city's budget comes from where people work, not where they live. So if we can attract more offices and where people work, we have a lot more money to then put into trails and things like that, and make our secondary amenities similar to those to the north, because that's one piece of the puzzle. And that's what I'm hoping we will be doing, and one of the reasons why we brought the assistant city manager from our friends to the north is because we have a vision for that and we want to move that forward. Second point is that so aside from expanding the pie that we have, one of the first things I did on city council was to say, hey, give me a breakdown, prioritization of all the projects we have in the parks, all the projects we have in the roads, and let's start really looking at this, because there are certain things that maybe we can push off. We've been putting historically, all of our prioritization has been in roads and roundabouts in Hilliard. And I think we can dial that back just a little bit and increase what we're doing with the parks and that sort of prioritization once you can actually lay it out and see from a policy perspective where you're putting your money.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion.
I am passionate about this subject. I want to see expanded bike trails. I want to see expanded green spaces. We have an opportunity, if we can get enough money pulled together, to expand our bike trail through the railroad, right, that goes probably clear to downtown. I would love to see that. That would pull us together with other neighborhoods, with downtown Columbus. And I think that we need to be looking for creative ways to get that financing. I agree, we definitely need more commercial business here in Hilliard. I'm sure there are grants and other ways that we could fund this project, which wouldn't have to be done all at once, of course. We could do it piecemeal. And I love the concept of like a town square. You know, I think that Hilliard has some wonderful things going on in Old Hilliard. I would love to see a space where the community can come together and really be a community and enjoy each other in a beautiful town square. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Move on to the next question here, and I'm sorry, Tina.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
My turn. Okay, now I love the parks and the walking and the bike trails, but when I think about this, I think about the environmental health of our city, not just the parks and the trails. And I think it's really important that we think about that in a bigger picture way. I think we should aim to include more than the minimally required green space in when we have new developments in our city. And I think that I don't know quite how we'll do this, but I think we need to look at ways to cut the carbon emissions in our city operations. I just think that, okay, we can't solve all the problems of the world, but in our city, we can make a start with our parks, with our green spaces, and to have an environmentally healthy city and to be a model for other cities. And that's something that I would like to work on with members of our community and fellow city officials once I'm elected to city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Now we will move on to the next question. And we'll begin with Derek Richardson. What would you do to hold the mayor or city manager and finance director accountable for internal controls and monitored properly?
It's a very technical question for 90 seconds. And I will be honest, I'm not on city council, so I don't know the back end workings and how it works. One of the reasons why I want to run is because I am a business owner. And so if if my business had some holes in the financing, I would come up with a plan to stop it. To be fair, I don't know what the plan is because I'm not with city council. Mr. Tarazi made a post on Facebook that said some information is coming this week, I think, to help with the citizens and to help with maybe relaxing some of our anxieties. So it's a tough question to answer because I'm not there yet. But what I can tell you is that I hope that city council is making changes so that the citizens feel safe and that their finances feel safe as well.
Thank you, Derek. Bob Stepp.
First of all, we're hiring a city manager. That's what his job or her job will be. So we have to trust in her to make sure that everybody's doing their job. We also have if everybody's seen the auditors, we had a report done on what suggestions to be done and things to make things better in the city of Hilliard as far as controlling issues such as that. And as soon as those things are in place, if anybody's read that, they're spectacular. did a real good job on that, and as soon as we get that together and those things are in place, I think it'll be much better, and I'll feel a lot better about it. But as far as that's why you got a manager. She's she'll be in control of that. That's her job. If she doesn't do it, then we'll move on.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi.
This is a very hard question to answer in 90 seconds because there's so much going on with it. Also, some of it we can't talk about. It's in progress and so forth. So one of the things to understand also is that we currently have the mayor and everybody reporting to the mayor until the end of the year. So we as city council can't fire people, for example. They report to the mayor. We can't affect personnel in that way. We do have significant audit reports. We've sent it we rely on them to actually implement it. We can't force it at this stage. Once we come January, that's priority number one from my book for the city manager. Because I really believe what I kind of consider the cockroach theory, that if you see one cockroach, there's probably a whole lot others that you don't see. And if there's when you have one theft, you can't have a single individual committing a theft without having an institutional incompetence, lack of oversight, lack of procedures, and that allows that kind of thing to happen. And the audit report clearly shows that. We're trying to put in those repairs, but that's going to be priority number one, is to get that under control come January.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion.
Thank you for the question. The report that Bob referred to is the Schneider Downs report, which when I tried to find it on the city's website, I couldn't, which was quite interesting. But anyway, I do have a copy of this one. Apparently there's a second one floating around as well, but we don't have access to that one because of the lawsuit that's pending. The city sued a different accounting auditor company. And so that other Schneider Downs report is in lockdown mode. But the Schneider Downs report did show the shortcomings in the different departments. And I know when we met with Ed Merritt, and so he told us what's been done there to prevent, further thefts at the pool from not happening again. We don't know, though, what any of the other departments have done because the city has not made any of that public. So yes, not being on council, I can't tell you exactly what has been done. I can say that yes, the city manager will be a very welcome addition to the staff in order to have proper controls in place.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tina Catone.
Can you repeat the question,
I
please?
sure can. What would you do to hold the city manager and finance director accountable for internal controls and monitor properly?
Okay, thank you. Great question. As others have said, I don't necessarily have a background on what that would be like, but I know that the financial health of our city is very important, and we have had the disruption of the pool theft, which is something that nobody seems to forget, and people that don't know anything about Hilliard know that, and they ask that question. And I just think it's a great time for all of those processes to be reviewed and analyzed for the city manager and for everyone else in finance and for all the other departments in the city that fortunately have not had a disruption like the pool, but as has been mentioned by other people, but we don't really know. There's that lack of transparency, that we don't really know what's going on in the city. We find out when things are done and we don't find out during the process, which is, I think it's just helpful for most people to understand what's going on before it's over. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh.
I came on council very shortly after the theft was made known. One of the first things I got to vote on was voting on funding the audit. We felt like after a theft of that magnitude, it was our absolute responsibility to hire a professional firm to come in. Schneider Downs did an audit. It is a public document. Anybody can get that. They came up with 25 recommendations. For example, previously we did not have a credit card policy. That seems like something we should have. We do now. At our October 28th meeting, we've actually tasked all of the department heads to provide us with an update on where they stand on the deficiencies and recommendations that were made in that report. So we should have a very full picture at that time. Additionally, I think there's always more we can do. One thing that I think would be interesting to do is to sort of war game out somebody trying to cause a theft or break into our internet security.
Thank you, Pete. We'll move on to the next question here. This one will start with Bob Stepp. Council is often faced with decisions where residents speak at meetings, submit petitions, or write letters voicing their concerns. Can you talk about how you evaluate resident input and how it influences your decision-making process?
Whatever I do is going to be best for the city. Well, you got a lot of upset people, especially when they're in small areas that are taking it personal, some of the decisions that the council makes, and it's not meant to be like that. Sometimes you're bound by laws, certain parts of, if you're residential or if you're commercial properties, and there's really nothing that you can do as a council member to change that. So whatever I'm going to listen to the constituents. I mean, that's what I'm there for. That's what my job is, and the ones that voted us in. But I'm also going to do whatever's best for the city. That's it.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi.
Thank you. This is a tricky question because it's very hard when you're, and I hadn't really thought about it before being on city council, but when you have a group of 50 people or 10 people or 5 people or even one person getting up and expressing something, how do you know if that person is just representing one opinion out of 30,000 people? Or does that even represent the majority? Does it represent, what does it mean? So you kind of, how do you wait? So what I tried to do was, particularly some of the hotter issues, was to say how can we sort of come up with procedures to quantify a little bit better, because it's never perfect unless you run everything by referendum, which we can't do. So it's just, how do you quantify it a little bit more statistically, a little bit more consistently, so you don't kind of track how many times, so you're not getting like the same person writing 20 letters, and then you're like, oh, there's a lot of people complaining. Well, it's just one person writing 20 letters. Can we, and what about the rest of the people? So it's not a perfect thing. At the end of the day, the point of putting somebody on city council, and a lot of these issues are very complicated too. And so you have to try, and my commitment is I'm not going to put my opinion first. I'm going to listen to as much as I can, and then make, at the end of the day, what I think is what's in Hilliard's best overall long-term interest. That's how I'm going to ultimately weigh everything.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion.
I'm running on a platform of greater resident involvement. And we plan to do that by having neighborhood planning groups throughout all sections of the city. I think it's important to get citizen input on the ground level of decision making and not at the back end. By that time, something's already gone through the process. The decision's practically made by the time people get 3 minutes of say in council meeting. I've been in lots of meetings where people have a say at council or even at the planning and zoning meeting, and it seems like their input wasn't really impactful with the decision makers. Now, part of the process would be to know the information, like Omar said. If it's one person writing 20 letters, I think that people should be given that information. We're not given that information just sitting out on a council meeting. So that also brings in greater transparency by the city council. But yes, we need to bring our citizens in on the ground level so you have a true and meaningful voice.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tina Catone.
I am running on the same platform as Cynthia, so community involvement is very important to us. I will comment on Cynthia's comment on Omar's comment about wondering how many people someone speaks for when they get up in city council, because I thought that about the funeral home. And there were a lot of people that came to speak over multiple meetings, and they had a lot of petitions. But I just kept wondering, and another thing I still don't know, how many people out of that entire community did that petition or those people that came to the meeting represent? Because I never got a feeling if it was the majority of the community that was upset about the funeral home or just a small group. So quantifying those kind of things are important. But just the basic idea that I understand, I'm sure it's way more complicated than I know, and I know that everybody won't always be happy, but getting people involved at the ground level, even if they don't get the decision that they wanted in the first place, their voices were heard and they participated in the conversation. And that's really important, and that is something that I will bring to City Council once I'm elected, and I thank you for the question.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh?
I think community involvement is the most important thing. That's one of the first things I did, again, when I got appointed, was I started holding office hours at Coffee Connections. I'm there every Thursday from 8 to 10 a.m. I'll be there tomorrow. If you like or don't like something I said, you can come see me there. I sit there and just take in information. If you want to meet with me separately, I try and coordinate that within my schedule as well. But ultimately, what I am tasked to do on City Council is take what I hear and then research it. And sometimes people have incorrect information that they're sharing, and it's my job to find out, is what they're telling me accurate or not? And then I have to make decisions based on facts, not based on taking a poll. I need to evaluate all of the information and make my decisions that way. The community input is where I learn about things that I may not have thought of. That gives me more things to look into. So it's vitally important, and I hope more people will come see me on Thursday mornings.
Thank you, Pete. Derek Richardson?
So I may be wrong, so please tell me if I'm wrong. But somewhere, and I think it was on the Hilliard government website, it says the hierarchy of the city is the citizens, the mayor, and then council. I believe January 1st it'll go citizens, council, and then manager. And if I'm wrong, please raise your hand because we're not allowed to talk, but I think I'm right. So if we don't actually listen to the citizens, then what are we doing? We can't just make decisions because we want to as a council, and you know, let's say we're council, right? I don't like blue, okay? You're out of here, right? Doesn't make sense. We have this silly notion in society now that we can't listen to people with open ears. We're listening, but we're not actively listening. So when citizens talk and citizens have issues, just like you said, you have to take that information in actively, right? Then research it, and then you can provide an answer. If you don't listen to them, or if you say, oh, they can come, but I'm just gonna do it anyway, right? Then all of a sudden, you don't have community participation, and you're actually not running the hierarchy of Hilliard. And if I'm wrong, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Derek.
You're welcome.
Move on to the next question here, and this will be for Omar Tarazi. City Council will have the responsibility to provide direction to the city manager. What will your first 3 priority issues be for this manager?
Well, I think the first priority is making sure that, and I'm actually meeting with her, and I think that tomorrow or the next day, I think the number 1 priority is making sure that she understands she has our full support to make the team that she needs to move the city forward. And that's one of the things at City Council that we need to be very careful about, is once you hire a professional, we want professional management. The last thing we need is a council that comes in and says, we hired a professional, but we want to micromanage your team. We want to micromanage who you can fire, who you can't fire, what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. That's not what we're going to be as City Council, at least my perspective. I think we need to be take a step back and say, you're the professional. We're going to be the ones that are going to help mediate the community, and because she can't do everything, obviously, and we're going to be that interface. We're going to give general ideas, but at the end of the day, you're the professional that we hired to run our city and manage it. So that's priority number 1, and that gets into some of the staff that under the mayor, I think, I'm going to give her my perspective on that. Second priority is we really need to look at the economic development and where are we going to go with that with the amount of time. Third priority priority. I really think that we can divert some funds to our parks. I have some ideas of some areas of things we can budgetarily move around. I'm going to share with her my ideas, but at the end of the day, I'm going to trust in her judgment because I don't want to be micromanaging at that point.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion?
Well, one of the things I'd like the city manager to do right away when she gets in is to look at all of the departments. And yes, I agree, she's the professional. I would like her to evaluate and see where we need changes, because changes might be needed. Now, the second thing I would say should come from council, and that's where I think that we need to provide a vision and a strategy for her. That comes from council. We're the ones who are giving that direction to her. So I think it's really critical for us to do our homework, for us to get our things in place so that we can give her that vision of how we'd like to see Hilliard move forward. The third thing I would say is just, those relationships are so important. I really, really want to make sure that our relationship with our city manager as a city council is positive, and that we work on our relationships with the other governmental entities that we'll be working with.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tina Catone?
Thank you. I would think that one priority would be to give Michelle some history on the city. Not so much, not like gossip, but just so that she knows what has gone on in the city. And I would hope that her plan would be to take that in and just to move forward. But it's good to know what has happened before she came. And as was mentioned, economic development is important to the city. I would hope that coming from Dublin that she has experience with pursuing companies that might be willing to come into Hilliard, that she would know people to reach out to. And I think the third thing that would be good for her to know about would be relationships with all the cities and all the townships that border Hilliard, because we have so many things going on, not just with Hilliard, but with Columbus and with Dublin and with Norwich Township and Brown Township and all the townships. It can get very confusing for the people just living around here to know what all those relationships are. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh?
Number one for me is rebuilding our community partnerships. It's no secret that our entities have not been collaborating the way that we all wish they would, school board, townships. And even, as Tina said, with Columbus, we have to work with them. They are the 800-pound gorilla. So to me, that's priority number one. We'll be able to get so much further on any direction we want to take if we're all working together rather than against each other. Number two, I'd like her to bring the innovative approach that she described to us from Dublin in how they organize their staff, the various subgroups that they have within their staff, so that they're continuing to think of new ways to deliver services to the residents. That was probably the most exciting thing that she told us. I know not everybody got to hear, but in the interview. I hope she'll bring some of that here. And then number three, as it's been said, reevaluate our economic development policy, see what we can do maybe a little different that we have been doing so that we can encourage those new businesses.
Thank you, Pete. Derek Richardson?
So first, I think that City Council did a wonderful job with Michelle. I know you guys worked hard to vet the candidates. I think that her being from Dublin is unique in the fact that she does know the landscape of Hilliard, but she doesn't know it all. So I think the communication with her, giving her some history, is important. I think that when it comes to City Council's relationship with the city manager, look, I sit on several boards and we have directors that run programs and we allow them to use creativity. And I own 2 businesses and I have managers and I allow them to use their creativity. And sometimes it's a manager's question. Somebody says, hey, D, what's going on here? I said, hey, man, go talk to your manager, right? So we do have to allow the city manager the creativity and the room to be a city manager, or else we wouldn't have a city manager. We would just say, we don't need a city manager or a mayor, we just do it ourselves, right? So that's not how it works. So we need communication, but we need to form a relationship, because what I have felt, and again, I'm not in the closed doors, but what I have felt is that there hasn't been a solid relationship between council and the mayor. Hopefully we can change that, and we can have a solid relationship between council and Michelle.
Thank you, Derek. Bob Stepp?
First thing I'd tell her to do is call over her business connections in Dublin and have them moved to Hilliard. I want to get, one of the things that I'd like to see in Hilliard too is getting our city services back in our hands. Right now, a lot of it's farmed out, and there's no pride in that. These guys just, they do it when they want to, and they do not very good jobs, I don't feel, mowing and things like that. The other thing would be, what do I got here? Roads. Number 3, roads. We got to get the roads. I'm tired of the congestion. I'm just sick of it. That's one of the reasons why I'm into this. Is we got to get these roads under get them right. That's the first thing those are the first 3 things I'd tell her.
Thank you, Bob. We'll move on to the next question here, and this will be for Cynthia Vermillion. Start things off. Do you see a community rec center similar to that in Dublin coming to Hilliard?
I love this question. I've given it a lot of thought. I would love to see a bigger recreation center for Hilliard. Hilliard is almost 40,000 strong now in population, and we definitely need a better recreation center to handle the number of residents that we have. And it handles not just our city residents, of course, but we have our whole Hilliard School District population that also uses the recreation center. And I would definitely love to work toward getting another recreation center that would be better suited to a city of our size and growing. I don't know what that would look like, if it's remodeling the current one, if it's picking a different site for a new building. That's something that we could talk about as a council and with the city manager. But yes, I definitely feel that we do need another facility.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tina Catone?
Yes, I also love the idea of having a really big rec center. That's the kind of thing that brings communities together, places where everybody goes and they see each other. I've been to the rec center, and it's nice, but it was surprisingly small. I mean, there's one basketball court, and that's pretty much it, and that doubles for everything else that goes on in that building. It's interesting to me that one of the biggest things, it seems to me, that goes on there is the senior center, which is great, and I appreciate that, and I think that we need to have that, but that's the biggest thing in a rec center tells me right away that the center needs to be bigger. And I know that those centers also are places that kids can go in the summer for classes, and they're places that kids can go after school. And right now, I don't think, from what I've seen and been told, there isn't room for all of that. So if we could work it into the budget for a big rec center, I think that would be a great big boon for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh?
The rec center is very dated, and there's no question it needs to be probably replaced rather than upgraded. But that's a very expensive proposition. So I think we need to look at some possibilities of creative ways to do that. I'm not saying it's the best way, but I know Delaware partnered with the National Guard and YMCA on their new facility. We have a YMCA in Hilliard that is also sort of outgrowing its space, so maybe there's an opportunity for some collaboration there. Maybe as we look at the overall Grenner site, sports complex, maybe there's some private businesses that want to be a part of the conversation of building this new rec center. But there's no doubt we need a better rec center for our citizens. Tina mentioned the senior center. I've heard many times that people wish we could offer more there. So a new rec center might allow the opportunity for better programs for seniors.
Thank you, Pete. Derek Richardson?
So again, as president of the Optimist Club, I want a fantastic rec center. I don't want one like Dublin, though. Every question is like Dublin this, Dublin that. I'm from Westerville. Westerville is blowing Dublin's out of the water, so I want one like Westerville if that's an option, not Dublin. Look, we need a better rec center, and we need better community participation when it comes to our children. The Optimist program every year is pushing kids away to communities like Dublin and Grove City because we are out of space when it comes to basketball. We are using the Hilliard City School basketball gyms. We had 700 kids last year, and we pushed away over 125 kids. We said, no, you can't play in our league because we just don't have the space. So a rec center is number one on my priority. Pete stole my idea because I'm looking at that Grinner project, and it doesn't have to be private business. The Optimist Club might have some interest in that as well, which is one of the reasons I was talking to Ed this week. The Optimist program definitely wants some space for kids, and we need a new rec center, and a new senior center would come with it, so the seniors can play pickleball and basketball.
Thank you, Derek.
You're welcome.
Bob Stepp?
These are all great ideas, but we have to go back to what Omar said earlier. $90 million a year budget as opposed to $60 million a year budget. Unless we get some outside help, you're not going. It's going to be a long time till we see something like that. As much as we'd all love to see one, it's still a lot of money. So that's the only thing I got to say. We got to get commercial business in here. We need some more tax dollars. Can't do it on our own. My property tax is already high enough. I don't need them higher. I know you don't either. So we got to get commercial properties in here, commercial businesses, some weekend activity. We need more weekend business here, guys. I'm telling you, get some people from out of the city in here and spend some of their money in here instead of all of us going elsewhere to go spend our money. So that would help get that here.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi?
Yeah, if it's very easy for a politician to say, yeah, I'll give you anything you want, and then say, but I'm never going to raise taxes, and it's never going to work. There are ways of getting this done. It's not simple. It's something that will require, and I think it can be done without raising tax. My preference and what I'm going to be pushing for is that we don't go in any direction that involves any kind of tax increase to make the kind of project work. And I think there are ways of doing it. It's going to be something that's going to require more creativity, more effort than what we've been done in the past, and also prioritization. Because at the end of the day, we're out of space on just about everything you can think of. We don't have enough soccer fields, we don't have enough basketball fields, we don't have enough rec center, we don't have this, we don't have that. There's a lot of things we don't have. And we have to at some point prioritize and say we can't do everything, but if we really coordinate and work our resources better, work smarter essentially, we can do a big dent to this problem here. It's not perfect, it's not going to please everybody, but we can definitely, I think, get something off the ground with a rec center if we as a community prioritize that. And I think that's one of the things as a community we have to have some conversations about what's more important to us as the overall community, because every little group is going to yell or be very vocal that their little area needs the most attention. We're out of time.
Thank you, Omar. We'll move on to the next question, and we will start back with Tina Catone. Should we keep Democrat and Republican partisanship on council? Why or why not?
Okay, interesting question because I've been thinking a lot about this. I really don't think that the work of city council is partisan. It's about people, it's about the city, it's about getting things done for a better way of life for everybody. I do think that having those D's and R's by our names tell people a little bit about us that don't know anything about us. There are assumptions that come with the political parties that we assign ourselves to, and there's a part of me that thinks that maybe that is important for us to keep because a lot of people don't know anything else about us. And I know it sounds like I'm waffling on this because I am waffling on this. I have been thinking about this, and I have just recently been, my bottom line is I'm not really sure how I am going to vote on that topic right now because I need to give it a little bit more thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh?
I very strongly believe we do not need the partisan label in Hilliard. I do not believe that tells anybody anything about me and what I believe it should be the direction of the city. I don't think the D next to Tina tells anybody anything about what she thinks the direction of the city should be. We are, a relatively small community. Everybody up here has campaigned on transparency and being open. I've already mentioned I do my Thursday morning coffee connections. You can get to know your candidates. You should not use the R&D as shorthand for how you're going to vote. You should vote based on the experience, the knowledge, and the vision that people have when they're running for this office.
Thank you, Pete. Derek Richardson?
I also don't believe that an R or a D tells you who I am. I don't think that City Council is focused on national issues, which is the assumptions that you have when somebody says I'm an R or I'm a D. I don't believe we make any decisions on abortion or gun rights or immigration here in Hilliard. I think what we do make decisions on are roads and schools and parks and green space. And I think that both R's and D's both have brilliant ideas, believe it or not, when it comes to those things here in Hilliard. And so my opinion is no, it's not necessary to have an R or a D by your name in City Council.
Thank you, Derek.
You're welcome.
Bob Stepp?
I concur. There's no reason to have it on there. This gives public more of a reason to get to know their candidates too. A lot of people just go in there and they see an R and they flip it all down, or get a C, D, and they flip it all down. No, this gives you a reason. Who's running? I better get to know this person. You're making a big decision for your city. So this is the reason why you don't need to have that on there. Vote for whoever's best qualified in your mind, and that's what I'm behind.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi?
Yeah, I agree that if, to whatever degree we're discouraging people from just voting down the slate and not actually getting to know their candidates. Now, people will still vote R&D regardless of what you do, whether you have it or not. I mean, people will get their slate cards, and some people do that, and they're free to do it. Now, that doesn't stop that from still happening. I don't believe that Hilliard has been functioning as an R&D thing. I think it's been mostly, again, as I said before, a mayor's way of doing business and an alternate way of doing business. Most of the people that you would call that have an R next to them that I know on City Council, they completely, if you ask them on national issues, it spans the gamut. They might give you very Democrat answers, even though they technically have the R. So I don't think it does have a lot to do. But I do want to say one thing. I do think that we shouldn't give up on the party system. And I think the national party system is completely a mess. And to the degree, both parties, in my view, and I'm going to make, and the way that gets fixed is from the bottom up. And so I think that that's something that shouldn't, while it has nothing to do with city, but I'm not going to give up that we need to fix these parties because they're ultimately running the country and they're not doing a great job from my perspective. So.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion?
I agree that leading your local community should not be an R versus D issue. However, for 2019 in Hilliard, it is still a partisan election. So please keep that in mind. Now, I do believe that it's important, as everyone has said, to get to know your candidates, know what their values are. I value including people in the decision-making process. That is huge for me. I, as a resident, have felt left out. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels this way. So yes, I am in favor of not having partisan elections as well.
Thank you, Cynthia. We'll now move on to the next question, and this will begin with Pete Marsh. What are your thoughts on making public safety a priority and its potential costs?
Oh, well, public safety is probably the top priority for a local community. That's, our police force is organized around the city. In terms of the cost, there are costs associated with the manpower necessary to staff all the shifts, and then there's costs with the equipment. And the police go through a lot of equipment very often, and we want them to have good equipment. We haven't, in my brief time on council, had any issues with providing the police department the tools that they have told us they believe they need. We've always approved their budget requests. We've approved upgrades to the facility here, including the gun range. So, I mean, that's one of the top priorities. That's not an area where you want to be penny pinching.
Thank you, Pete. Derek Richardson?
Yeah, so public safety is obviously one of the reasons why I stay here. I love Hilliard because I feel that it's safe for my family, my wife, and my kids. I am also endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, and I think that we should invest in our police because our police are the front line of defense. I met with Chief Fisher at this facility, and he was just talking about how he's looking to grow with the community. We brought up the community is going to grow, so we can't obviously keep the same staffing levels of police force here with bringing in tens of thousands of people to Hilliard over the next 30 years. So we have to invest in our police force to make sure that Hilliard remains safe and to make sure that we want to stay here, because I don't want to live in a place that's not safe.
Thank you, Derek. Bob Stepp?
That's the #1 priority for council. I mean, think about it. We're here to have the police, to protect our community, and the fire department. And I personally feel that we have the best in Central Ohio. As fire department and the trustees for Norwich and Brown Townships, they do a great job. And I'm very happy to live in Hilliard and feel very safe in knowing that if any emergency happens in my neighborhood or with me, that they'll be there for me.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi?
So one of the things I want to see that City Council has the data available to it to be able to make more informed decisions. Because basically what you've been having, while we have a fantastic police force, if they come and say we want to add X number of people or whatever, we have no metrics, no measurement, no understanding as to where to place that with respect to any of our other priorities. And so what I want to be able to see, like if you, we don't, when they came forward during my time, we had to vote on a, that we needed a drug program, and it costs money. Everything costs money. So how do you put that, how much benefit is that going to do versus a lot of our other priorities? And so one of the things as on council, one of the priorities also for Michelle, and one of the things I've been putting already, is how do we create more data-oriented approach to decision-making, so it's not just emotional and it's not a blank check. Because if you give a blank check to anybody, no matter how good they are, they'll abuse it. They'll end up buying a bunch of toys, because that's what people do. They buy toys that they don't necessarily need, and we have to be able to push back a little bit. Again, not interfere getting into people's, and by the way, I'm also endorsed by Fraternal Order Police. It's not about getting into people's profession and what they do and micromanaging that, but at the same time is doing our job of being able to understand where things are going from a big picture.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion?
I agree. Public safety is extremely important. The city of Hilliard is very generous with that. I believe $11 million of the budget goes to public safety. We did meet with Chief Fisher, and he indicated that his department has a generous training budget, and he indicated that things were really going well, and so that was really good to hear. We have Mr. Mosick on board, who's like the liaison, I believe, the public safety director, so I'm sure that he would be able to assess any further needs that the department has and bring that to the attention of City Council. I also think it's important to know how the people of Hilliard are feeling. You know, I might feel safe, but does somebody down the street feel safe, or somebody on the other side of town, do they feel safe? So that's part of this, keeping in touch with people and keeping a pulse on how people are feeling in our city.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tina Catone.
Thank you. Yes, public safety, feeling safe is very, very important to me. I'm extremely paranoid. You can ask my husband, he thinks it's ridiculous. But as a woman, I've just learned to be extra careful. So feeling safe to me is very important. And I know that Hilliard has a really good reputation for being a safe community. I do know that the police budget is very robust, as Cynthia mentioned, and that makes sense. We have a robust budget, we have a large police department, everybody's well-trained. I don't have enough other information to say whether the police needs more, whether they need less, but I think that keeping the city safe is really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. We'll now move on to the next question, which will start with Derek Richardson. The new and improved park at Avery and Davidson is a great example of working with Hilliard schools to improve our community. How else can a city work with the schools to improve our community?
That's my neighborhood. And again, that park's getting a lot of use, so we appreciate the collaboration. Again, with being involved with youth sports, I think that the city and the schools are already working together with the Sports Commission. Unfortunately, I can use the excuse I'm a busy man. I haven't been able to go to all of the Sports Commission meetings. I have been to a few, and again, I've spoken with Ed, and I think that that's a start. It's a great start to start a collaboration between the city and the schools. We need more of it. I think that, again, my feeling, outsider looking in, to be fair, is that sometimes the government thinks of the 39,000 people that live in Hilliard proper, and sometimes the school is worried about the 90,000 people that feed into the school system. And so, sometimes you're just doing a little bit of this, right? Butting heads because it's not apples to apples. And so I think that conversation will be good. I believe that Mr. Marsh said that they've started that conversation, so I was proud to hear that when Mr. Marsh and I sat down. And I think that we need more of it, and that the schools and the city should be on the same page 100%.
Thank you, Derek. Bob Stepp.
In my opening statement, I said the same thing. As a councilman, I will work hard to get with the Hilliard School Board and work with them in making camaraderie. We got to get together all on the same page, and however we can help each other. And we have a huge. You go to any of the schools around here, like our football games, stuff like that. A lot of people involved in the school system here, and it's a great place to live. And, we got to get behind them as much as they're behind us. So, any way to help them.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi.
What was the question? Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I'll repeat. The new and improved park at Avery and Davidson is a great example of working with Hilliard schools to improve our community. How else can the city work with the schools to improve our community?
Well, several different areas. One, I think it's hard to underestimate how much distrust there still is, even till this day, between the city and institutionally between the different and the township and the schools in terms of how things have operated in the past. It hasn't been a fantastic institutional relationship. Now, on a personal level, there's a lot of improvement that's been made, but there's more to be done. And so in sort of aligning and finding ways of common ground to work together. What I'd like to see happen, and one of the things I was doing on council, is to say, hey, can we take it now from an interpersonal relationship to actual institutional collaboration, meaning creating memos of understanding on certain topics, or not just, hey, let's talk in a coffee shop about things, but actually take it to that next level where we've institutionalized the collaboration. And where that comes in, number one is in the development of the city, because everything that we do in terms of development affects kids in schools, and everything that they need in terms of kids in schools affects our economic development. And so that needs to be more than just the casual friendship, let's meet at a coffee shop. That needs to be much more institutionalized in terms of how we collaborate on data, how we collaborate on policy for growth.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion.
I am really excited to collaborate with our schools. I think that there's a lot of potential there for us to gain from each other. We met with one of the city engineers a few weeks back, and we were actually talking about the parking situation in Old Hilliard, especially when there are special events, and she brought up the fact that, that the schools are right there. There's plenty of parking space available. That's awesome. Let's collaborate with them on things like that. We can use their land for parking overflow when we need it. Some of the other things we've also talked about as candidates is, let's talk to the schools about maybe doing some solar power, using some of that rooftop for that. I think that there's a lot of possibilities there for energy savings for our city, for the residents. A lot of creative things that we could do when we collaborate with the schools. And I'm excited about the possibilities.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tina Catone?
Yes, considering the number of schools and the size of the schools that we have in Hilliard and the number of students that go to those schools, not just from Hilliard, but out from people in Columbus that come to the schools and the townships, it is so important that we have a good relationship. I mean, people complain a lot about the taxes they pay for schools, but they live in the city because they want to send their children to the schools. So, you can't just have one without the other. It's so enmeshed. The schools aren't they the biggest employer in Hilliard? Don't people that live in Hilliard work at the schools? We should be collaborating on summer programs, on after-school programs, on sharing resources. It should be a relationship that is prosperous for everyone, not one that's full of conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh?
Early this summer, we started, it was one of my ideas was to start this community leader breakfast. So city council, townships, and schools there. And I heard a little bit about this project and I think, the playground's great, but the coolest thing about that whole project is the jobs that those students signed contracts for. It's unbelievable, and it opened up my eyes to the opportunity for, as we're looking at economic development, to work with the schools and trying to figure out, can we integrate job training there? Not everybody needs to go to college. It's very expensive, and there's a lot of good jobs out there for people who don't go to college, but they need training. So that's a huge area. Already mentioned is the sports facilities. We're short on fields. If we can collaborate, that's a great area. One more that just came to mind, there's some really cool things going on at the McVeigh ILC. Opportunities for some of those kids to work with maybe our IT department, maybe with our communications department. There's just so many ways we could possibly partner.
Thank you, Pete. Our next question will begin with Bob Stepp. New developments in Hilliard, Columbus, and Dublin impact our infrastructure, especially roads and schools. Where do you see council's role in ensuring our infrastructure stays ahead of the growth and that developers are accountable to help with improvements and accommodate the growth?
Great question. Letty, who's sitting in the audience here, she's by herself. First thing we need to do is help her out, because there's going to be a lot of construction going on around here. A lot of the roads are already they're behind. They're behind. There's nothing we can do about them. All the new projects going in, we have to make sure that they all are wide enough. They're big enough for commercial traffic. Especially our gateway to the city along 270. We have to make that so that people are invited into our city instead of seeing these backups all the time people are tired of. The road we just did on site at Darby looks good and everything like that, but now we're talking about expanding out to the west. It's a 2-lane road. Why wasn't that made to be 4 lanes right away while we were doing all that? Same with Leopard and things like that. Just there has to be a little bit more involvement, and that's something I will do personally. Because I have some background in construction, and I would want to be right on top of that with Letty and her department as far as making the roads the way they should.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi?
Would you mind repeating the question one more time, just like
Sure.
the whole question?
Yes. New developments in Hilliard, Columbus, and Dublin impact our infrastructure, especially roads and schools. Where do you see council's role in ensuring our infrastructure stays ahead of the growth and that developers are accountable to help them with improvements to accommodate the growth?
Well, council's role in that is going to be different moving forward than what it was in the past. I think just general observation that there was a lot of short-termism to some degree in decisions where let's just throw something up and please the developers. They make their money, they move on, and we'll let somebody else deal with the problems that generate from that, traffic and water and sewer. That's somebody else's problem later after we've made our money and moved on. And to push back on that, and that's where we get away from sort of political decisions where you're just, making, the people that have money get their way, to professional decision making where we balance the need of the developers who are not bad people, they're just trying to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that, with the needs of the city and the needs of the city long term. And that means that you need people on council. It's not a job, it's not like something where you just can be, you have to be somebody that has the willingness and ability to really get into the weeds and really be able to push back on developers, people with a lot more money, a lot more resources, to say, look, somebody's got to be the voice of the people. I'm elected to be the voice of the people, and I'm not going to let, and we're going to find a middle ground here where we get something for our citizens too, and it's not just a blank check for you to just do whatever you want to do with your development.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion?
This is a perfect time to go back to our master plan, a master plan that hasn't necessarily been followed, but it's my understanding we haven't really taken a good look at it again for like the last 10 years. So right now that we're moving to the city manager, where we're talking about getting resident input, let's take a look at our master plan. Let's make some decisions there. We also have water and sewage issues, of course, because the city of Columbus provides us with those things. There are some creative things that we can do. I was hearing a program yesterday about doing rain collection that would lessen the impact of flows into our sewage system. And, so we always have to be looking outside of the box, right? And find these solutions that can help us with our growth issues. Traffic issues, yes, I agree. We need to be looking ahead. What's the right answer? It's complicated. But having a good relationship with the city of Columbus is key because they really affect us a lot. So I definitely plan to have a good relationship there.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tina Catone?
Yes, I would echo that we need to have a good relationship with Columbus since what they do affects us when it's close to us, and they do a lot of things that are close to us. And pardon me, as was mentioned, our plan is 10 years old, and that needs looking at too. I would like to bring up just a little different way to look at this. We do have infrastructure problems, but instead of talking about how are we going to make the roads bigger or better, let's look at other forms of transportation so that we don't have to congest the roads with all the traffic. Let's promote ride sharing. Let's get shuttle buses so that people can travel back around in Hilliard without driving their car. Let's get buses that will take people around Central Ohio. And to support that, then we can have, what are they called? I wrote it. Oh, I'm sorry, I just blanked. Places where people park before they get on the bus.
Park and ride.
Thank you. We need park and ride facilities, and that would be one of my solutions to the infrastructure problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh?
One of the things I think we're doing well right now is with our infrastructure improvements using a complete streets policy. So we're not only looking at the cars, but including that bike lane, including the walking path, so that there are multiple options for transportation. We have a lot of needs in infrastructure, and it's very expensive. I think one of something that we've started to do in some of the new neighborhoods is creating community development authorities. I live in Heritage Preserve. We have a community development authority. I live there and I pay an extra property tax that nobody else in Hilliard does. The same is the case in Tarleton. so that those costs can then be applied to the infrastructure needs that are the result of me and my neighbors moving into that neighborhood. That's a great way to have the new people who are coming in pay for the incremental cost of the burdens they're putting on the infrastructure. And then lastly, we shouldn't lose sight of the old neighborhoods. We do have sewer issues in some of the more established neighborhoods. As I've been walking around the city passing out flyers, some of the sidewalks are terrible. We need to upgrade those too.
Thank you, Pete. Derek Richardson?
Yeah, so I think first we have to decide who we want to be. If we want commercial to come in, then we definitely have to worry about infrastructure and streets and roads. When Bo Jackson was there should have been probably a cross street from Leopard to Cosgray, because if I'm at Giant Eagle, I got to go all the way down to Scioto Darby to, get across town, right? Most of our roads are going one way. We don't have cross streets. So if you look at cities that have commercial and a lot of people, they have streets that go crossways, right? They're blocks or city blocks. So if we want to continue to be sort of a small town, farming community like Leopard and Cosgray, then we'll keep those roads going in one direction. But if we want to bring commercial and boom and be robust and be like Dublin and all this hip stuff, then we got to just start putting roads the other way. It's actually fairly simple.
Thank you, Derek. Next question, we'll begin with Omar Tarazi. What one bold move do you want as your signature issue?
Well, I see city council as a team effort. I really think if you approach city council as that you're the guy that's going to fix it all by yourself, that's not, you have to come in there very clear with what you bring to the table, and I think that I, bring, certain specific value. I'd rather it be, my preference is that there isn't something that is so signature that Omar Tarazi did this and it wasn't a team project. Even if I led it, which there are things I've already done and I've led. I prefer to lead from behind. I don't really like to, that's not my personality to be that person. In fact, maybe that's one reason why we've had so much problems up till now is there's too much of maybe that in the past. But I do think that, that's just my personality. I would be happy if I don't get elected. I'll be happy knowing that I contributed, for example, in the choice of our first city manager. I don't need anybody to know that this is a signature something or other for Omar or whatever. But anyway, so that's just my personality on it. Oh, and since I have an extra time, I think we can get done with the rec center thing. I think we can get it done. I have ideas of how to do it, and we'll make that happen.
Yes. Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion.
I would have to say the one bold move for me is to create those neighborhood planning groups that are going to get all of you involved in this process in a very meaningful way. That to me is really important. Again, having the voice of different people is important. I've met lots of people at the doors where they nod their heads and, yeah, I would get involved if I knew I would make a difference. And I've met people who have areas of expertise in green spaces and other fields, and I know them now. We can use their expertise now when we're discussing these various issues. So again, to me, it goes back to people, people, people.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tina Catone.
So everything Cynthia said, we've been spending way too much time together, but I agree with everything she said, and I would want to be part of that team that brings the community more into the decision-making of the city. And I have been out there knocking doors as well. I've knocked almost 1,500 doors, and when I tell people that I want to help bring community input into the city, they get so excited, and they want to participate. I mean, everybody doesn't, of course, but the people that want to participate, I make a note about it, and I think, wow, that is so interesting, because I know that my thoughts are just my thoughts, but when I work in a team and I have input from other people and I get their ideas together, we make a really good decision, and I would look forward to that being part of what I contribute to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh?
Well, it shouldn't be considered bold, but maybe it is. If I had just one thing that I hope that I accomplished, that I could say I made a difference on, it would be in improving community relationships. And there's a lot of them. I've already mentioned the city, the schools, the townships. We don't have an awesome relationship with Columbus. That's a relationship that should be improved. It's the same thing with the residents. Being open, having communications and dialogue, and having engagement back. That requires a two-way street, requires people to talk to us too. So, like I said, it shouldn't be that bold, but that would be the one thing I'd hope that I could say I made a difference on.
Thank you, Pete. Derek Richardson?
All right, so City Council number 1 is not a place for individuals, so I agree with what you're saying. So this is a conversation starter that I would like to have. I want to release it now. You said bold, right? You guys ready for this? Here we go. All right, so we have all this farmland, and everybody says when I'm knocking doors, no more apartments, no more apartments. We had a question earlier, no more apartments, blah, 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 blah. What if we could still pay the farmers by taking the land, turning it into solar fields, destination-type solar fields? And I'm not talking about like plain solar fields, but sort of like they have in China that are in like light up panda bear designs. And people come to Hilliard to look at the solar fields in the farmlands to our west. It takes a lot of research. There's a lot of stuff to do there, but it would bring people to Hilliard. It would also start to talk about green energy and solar energy as well. I don't have enough time. You can tell me to stop already because I don't have enough time to go into the detail of the plan, but you talk about bold. I want to have that conversation whether I win or not.
Thank you, Derek.
You're welcome.
Bob Stepp?
I would love to see us redo 270 from Davidson all the way up to the end of Mill Run and take out all the meaningless brush that's all over the place there. Leave the nice pine trees and put in a nice lawn along there, wrought iron fence along that whole thing. I want people to see the commerce that's in Hilliard from 270. Make it really nice and appealing to anybody who even wants to bring their businesses in here. Show them that Hilliard is open for business. Big Hilliard sign over 270. Let them know where they are. Everybody else is doing it. We need to get on that bandwagon too. The other thing, just real quick, I'd love to see a festival in Hilliard, like a 3-day festival, the Bourbon Bluegrass Festival. That's the one I want.
I like bourbon.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, so this will conclude our questions from the public. As previously mentioned, there is time reserved in this program for the candidates to ask one specific question to another candidate. The question can take no longer than 1 minute to ask the question. The candidate to whom the question is posed will have 1 minute and 15 seconds to respond if the candidate chooses to respond. And to maintain proper order, we'll begin with Cynthia Vermillion. And if you do not have a question, just reply no.
I do have a question. And do I ask it to a certain person?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess this is going to go to Pete, just because you've been on council the longest. So the question is about some of the charter changes. We'll go back 3 years ago, issue 9, which eliminated the TIFs for residential development. But on this latest charter change, proposed charter change, you're coupling bringing back residential TIFs with the school board and township approval, along with more executive sessions allowed for economic development issues. So why should residents vote for that?
So I'll take those separately. Going to executive session for economic development would basically just put us in line with other communities in the area. They already have that authority. We do not have it. There are certain times where a potential large employer doesn't want their plans to be known in the public until they, have some time to progress with them. So that provides the opportunity for us to help them keep secrecy on their project. Eventually, as with all things, it has to come out in the public. It has to be voted on and debated in the public. The second one on the TIFs, the idea is that would allow for potentially a TIF to be applied to a mixed-use project. It can only happen if both the schools and the townships approve it. If either one of them have an issue, then it doesn't happen. And it brings them to the table early in the conversation, instead of what's happened in the past is an agreement has been come to and then it's been imposed on those groups. So it brings them in right from the start.
Thank you. Move up to Tina Catone.
Yes, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Pete Marsh.
No questions.
Derek Richardson.
I have a question for Mr. Stepp. You talked about owning a home and having something to go to work for, et cetera, et cetera. Does that mean that people who don't own a home and who may not be striving to own a home don't fit into your views?
No, that's not what I'm saying. My whole comment was there's pride in ownership, and that's what I'm trying to stress. No. That's all I'm saying. Is you see pride in ownership, just like in just everything. If you own it, you take pride in it, and that's why I'm just trying to show people that there's other places for affordable housing, and it's right there in front of us that needs to be taken care of. There's some houses that need some loving. You know that.
Sure.
Over there in Beacon and
Sure.
Avery and stuff like that. So that's the only thing I'm saying there.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Bob. Bob, time for a question?
I have nothing. Good luck, everyone.
Omar Tarazi.
Just good luck to everybody.
So as mentioned previously, you will have an opportunity for a closing statement, and that will be limited to 1 minute. We will begin with Tina Catone.
Okay. I want to be a voice for the community. When I'm elected to City Council, I will not accept the answer of, this is how we've always done it. I also currently am not accepting the idea that all the problems in the city should be laid at the feet of any one individual or any group. I'm sure there's enough blame and plenty of successes to go around and to be shared with everyone, and I believe that everyone is doing the best job they can for the city. But if you are ready for change, if you are ready for new faces, and you want to see something different from City Council, then make your decision to vote for someone whose only agenda is to serve the city and usher in growth and change in a sustainable way. Make your decision to vote for me, Tina Catone, for Hilliard City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Pete Marsh.
Thank you all for taking the time to come listen to us tonight. I grew up in a family that believed it was important to be involved in your community. And since my wife and I chose Hilliard to be our home, I've worked to be an active member of this community. I've served on the Environmental Sustainability Commission, the Board of Directors for Destination Hilliard. I'm active in my church at St. Brendan's, and I'm involved with Old Hilliard, Inc. We do the Halloween haunt and the bunny hop downtown. I've enjoyed my time on council, and I'm incredibly excited for the future of Hilliard that we have to look forward to with the new city manager. I work hard to learn the issues that come in front of me, and I also work hard to be available to anyone who wishes to share their thoughts, even if ultimately we come to different conclusions. I'm a firm believer in collaboration, and I don't believe that our political parties or our little petty divisions matter. What should matter is the experience and the vision that a candidate has. The future of Hilliard is bright, and I hope they have the opportunity to help shape it by returning to council. I ask for your vote November 5th.
Thank you, Pete. Derek Richardson.
I don't think we've talked about our full acronym that Cynthia and Tina and I are running on, and that is a PACT. with Hilliard, and that stands for planned growth and development, which has been touched on by everybody, accountability, which has been touched on by everybody, community involvement, which has been touched on by everybody, and transparency. And so I think that everybody in the room and everybody here up front is looking for those same things. I am dedicated to making sure that that happens in Hilliard. I also won't take, because that's how we do it, as an answer, or I don't know, as an answer. We will dig deep and figure out how we can make this city better. I love this city. I want my kids to remain here, and I want this to be our home for many years to come.
Thank you, Derek.
You're welcome.
Bob Stepp?
I'm focused on common sense pocketbook issues that affect the quality of life, your safety, and your kids' education. I'm not running here to be a career politician. I already had a successful career in the private sector. I should be playing golf every day. I'm running because I want to make Hilliard an even better city than it is. That means attracting more commercial development to ease the burden of your property taxes, building Hilliard's image in Central Ohio as a place for weekend activities. Remember the Bourbon Festival, okay? Improving Hilliard's roads so they're safe for our families and support our local businesses and any new businesses wanting to come in here. Commercial traffic is going to be key to us doing any better here. And get our hard-earned state tax dollars back to our community to help pay for those road improvements.
Thank you, Bob. Omar Tarazi?
It's very easy for people to talk about change, and the hard work is just getting in and doing it. And both Pete and I have been doing it for a while, and we're building on change that others have come before us. The city was very stuck in a certain way of doing business, and I'm very happy to be part of my little part of it, and I want to be elected so that I can take it to the next level over the next 4 years, because I think this is a tremendous opportunity to really set some groundwork, really take it to another level of professionalism, of institutional coordination, positive collaboration, really get the best out of the staff that we have and the resources that we have as a city. I'm very positive and optimistic about it. I think that I bring a lot individually with my temperament, my background, my experiences. I don't think we should have 7 lawyers on city council, but I think that I personally bring my part, and I'll do my part to make this as good of a city as possible. So I'd like your vote.
Thank you, Omar. Cynthia Vermillion?
Thank you again for having us here. When my family moved here 15 years ago, we moved into the Brookfield Village neighborhood, and the first thing that struck me was how warm my neighbors were. I literally fell in love with the area, with my neighbors, and I became involved in the community in various ways. I want to be a voice for all of my Hilliard neighbors. I feel that is so important. I'm looking forward to changing processes so that you can have a voice at the front end. As Derek said, we are making a pact with Hilliard. And having a strong relationship with other entities that affect Hilliard is so important. I was endorsed by the mayor of Columbus, Andrew Ginther, and I know that we can work with the city of Columbus in ways that will impact our school system as well. So I would appreciate your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. And on behalf of the Hilliard Chamber of Commerce, we thank you for your involvement this evening, and thank you to the candidates for spending a few moments letting us know your thoughts. Have a great evening.
Thank you.